So one of the best tools you can have in your toolbox to help you scale revenue with the Department of Defense or the federal government as a whole is Phase 3. So let's break down what it is and how to best leverage it. We like Phase 3s because it allows us to keep profit margins that are similar to what you'll see on the commercial side. It makes it much more interesting for commercial companies that want to work with the federal government compared to normal acquisition pathways. And you can, when done right, be much faster award timelines. So a Phase 3 can be any dollar amount, any contract type. So first you have to win a Phase 1 or a Phase 2 SBIR or STTR. And once you win that, it checks the box for competition. So what people don't understand is this jump from Phase 1 or 2 to 3. And let me first say, you can go directly from a Phase 1, that checks the box, to move to a Phase 3. And I'll give an example here in a minute of doing just that. So when you win a Phase 1 or 2, that checks the box for competition. So that means if you're then talking to, let's say, someone at a program office within the Department of Defense, you can then influence that acquisition to be, and that funding to come directly to you instead of following the normal, archaic, bureaucratic acquisition process. They write a terrible requirement, they pick the lowest price. That is business as usual, that is the status quo. Phase 3 allows you to go and build those relationships, and sometimes with the Phase 1 and 2, you can actually be working with those customers to build that trust, show off the technology, build that relationship. And so you can take that, and then when they have budget or follow-up funding or whatever it might be, you can then shift and shape that requirement to then just come out directly to you. So SBIR is this pot of money that's pulled over from other funding lines, other research and development funding lines that come out through the budgetary cycle. It sits in its own pot of money, and it's run separately and run differently over here. So that's a couple $1 billion that sits over here in the SBIR pot of money. Anything else of the almost $1 trillion budget within the Department of Defense can be executed on a Phase 3 on this sole source process using this authority. So you check the box to get your Phase 1 or 2, you build relationships with these other customers, and ultimately find a different funding source. Then you influence that requirement to come out as a sole source contract to you. And then you're just sitting down at the table negotiating, hey, is this what you want in the requirement? Hey, this is the pricing we can do based on the budget that you have. It allows a lot more flexibility there. So let's give an actual example of the power of Phase 1s and SBIRs and Phase 3s. So in the last year, we closed a $489 million IDIQ. We helped start this overall process, and we justified the $489 million to be a sole source contract directly to our client based on a prior Phase 1 that they had won. So in this situation, they had written a great scope that had gone into that Phase 1. Maybe it was tied to their platform or their overall just tech solution. And so we were able to build out the documentation that says, hey, this $489 million contract extends or derives from this Phase 1. So in this situation, it's hard to make a jump like this. In this situation, this customer had been working with their military customer for many years. They had built that trust. They had, again, worked and had this standing relationship with the customer and really proved that they could do what they said they could do. So that opened the door, and all this other work and this relationship opened the door to actually receive a Phase 3 contract and receive a sole source contract. There's a lot of hesitation oftentimes between sole source or direct awards. So that part is extremely important. So overall, they won this Phase 1 a couple of years ago. Then we sat down and helped justify with that customer and the contracting office, this is how it ties back to this. It was $50,000 to $150,000 Phase 1. Here's how it ties. Here's the scope that we want. Here's the flexibility that we want. So all of that was built into that overall IDIQ, or that really flexible high ceiling contract. So that's just one example of the power of, when done right, what you can do with that Phase 3 authority. So overall, I hope this sheds a little bit of light of what a Phase 3 is, maybe how to approach it, how to best leverage it. Thanks so much for watching.